I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Or like a motion to approve the agenda for April 3rd, 2025 as presented. So, second. Ponder, Cook. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Or like a motion to approve the personnel report as presented. So moved.
Second.
Ponder, Harmon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Or like a motion to approve the policy and regulation as presented. So moved. Second. Ponder, Cook. Any discussion, board? None. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Dr. Rumpus.
Thank you, President Bertrand, and thank you to the rest of the board for the opportunity to hold this special work session tonight. A Tier 1 K-5 literacy resource adoption is probably the biggest adoption that any district does, and one might also argue the most important when we think about the impact on all of our students K-5 and learning to read and the impact it has on all of the content areas and really the rest of their school experience. And so this is a huge undertaking, and while Dr. Buckman will introduce the team that did the work and thank them, I just wanted to open by thanking them. An incredibly dedicated, smart group of people who know this work and spent a lot of time working on it. And we're excited to share it with you tonight to allow you the opportunity to ask questions, especially tonight over the next couple of weeks, because we do intend to bring the significant recommendation to you at the April 17th business meeting. Dr. Buckman.
Thanks. So as Ken mentioned, before we get started, I'll introduce a few folks from our team. So Dr. Luke Lamers is our Director of Curriculum. Julie Roguski is our K-12 ELA content leader. So it's not just about writing curriculum, but making sure that our teachers have all the tools instructionally and resource-wise that they need in the classroom, and the assessments and all the things that drive the instruction that happens in the classroom. And then Dr. Sheets is our literacy coordinator. She also works K-12 and helps oversee all the literacy programming in the district. And then we have a few members of the academic department that are here to help if you have additional questions beyond what we have included in our presentation. I'll also mention that Angie and Joan from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt are with us tonight, and they are actually representing the company tied to the recommendation that we're bringing forward to you. And so as we get into the details of the resource and the specificities of the materials, if there are detailed questions, they're happy to jump up and answer those questions. And at the end, if you want to take some time to look at the materials, they're happy to serve as tour guides, for lack of a better word, while you look at those materials. So you might remember that we had a work session about a year ago, and we talked to you at that point in time about the findings of our ELA program evaluation. We talked a little bit about what we're currently using, what's working, and what we need. And what resulted from that was we need to look at a new K-5 Tier 1 ELA resource. And so as we talk tonight, we'll highlight just a little bit, kind of a reminder of what happened during that and what we learned and how that's connected to the recommendation that we'll be bringing to the April board meeting. Our folks, the literacy team, spent a significant amount of time this school year exploring options, analyzing data, reviewing the resources, collaborating with other districts, looking at the resource, and then going back and doing all of those steps all over again from multiple different resources to really make sure that the resource recommendation that we're bringing to you is one that we feel very confident about. We are sure that we've picked the best resource for the Francis Howell community. Oh, I forget that I have a clicker here. We did follow our typical resource recommendation approval process, but you'll also notice that there were lots of additional layers built in. And so, as Dr. Rumpus said, when you purchase a resource for elementary K-5, it's one of the largest academic purchases that a district can make. In Francis Howell, it's a resource that we will use with every student for 6 years, 600 teachers, and so it has a significant impact, and we want to make sure that we get it right. And we feel very confident that we got it right. And so because of the magnitude of the purchase, you'll see some steps that we go through that aren't typical when we purchase a resource. And so just want to mention that this is not a typical resource approval process that we went through. We don't typically have a resource workshop where we go through the resource. And again, it's because of the magnitude of what we're bringing to you. We want to make sure that you feel very comfortable with the purchase before we ask you to approve it next month. So tonight, we'll provide you a quick overview of the current reality. We'll talk a little bit about the process that we used and how decisions were made. We'll talk about what we learned along the way and how we have ultimately arrived at the decision. You'll hear from various members of the team as they share kind of what that journey looked like. And then our plan is to stop after each chunk of information and provide an opportunity to ask questions. And so you'll notice as we go through that the slides have a number in the top right corner. And so if there's a slide that you have specific questions around, feel free to jot that down, and then we can go back and reference that as we get into the questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie, our ELA content leader.
Hi, I'm Julie Roguski, the K-12 ELA content leader. I'm also a mom to 3 kids in the Francis Howell district, and my youngest is a struggling reader at 2nd grade in John Weldon. So I have both a professional and a personal investment in bringing this resource to our district. I've been working closely with Dr. Sheets, Mrs. Steggy, and Dr. Lammers on bringing the new ELA resource to our elementary school to support our new curriculums and our district's literacy plan. I want to start by reviewing our current resources. The current ELA curriculum was written in 2017, and the Teachers College Units of Study were adopted as the resource to deliver that curriculum. Units of Study emphasizes a workshop model for reading and writing, and that encourages authentic engagement with text, but it lacks that explicit and systematic phonics instruction, which was identified as a need in our program evaluation. The district began supplementing phonics instruction with benchmark phonics in 2020. It follows a research-based scope and sequence incorporating direct instruction, multisensory activities, and decodable text to reinforce phonemic awareness, letter-sound relationships, and word recognition skills. Grammar scope and sequences were created in the 22-23 school year, and Patterns of Power by Jeff Anderson was adopted as a grammar instructional resource in 2024.
Hi, I'm Melinda Sheets. Whoops. Try that again. Hi, I'm Melinda Sheets, your district literacy coordinator. Our academic department and literacy team have been working on this project for about 2 years, and we're excited to bring this information to you today. This journey began last school year when we conducted a program evaluation on our elementary ELA core instruction. In May of last school year, we presented the findings of this evaluation to the board. I wanted to provide a quick review of our findings as it has laid the foundation to the work that we present to you today. On this slide, you see the overarching themes that emerged from our data collection during our program eval. Data included survey data, student data, and an instructional materials evaluation using a rubric from Florida State University. We found several things going well, such as our phonics resource and instructional coaching model. Our overall reading scores were high, even though we know we can perform higher. We also found areas where we need to improve. For example, our current resource is not aligned to the science of reading and does not provide enough support to our teachers. We also need to continue providing science of reading professional development for our teachers to enhance all student outcomes and increase teacher efficacy. Our oral language and vocabulary development is an important part of a student's literacy success, and we need a resource that will support teachers in this instruction. A recent Missouri law indicates our core ELA instruction should be explicit, systematic, cumulative, and based on the highlighted areas that you see here on this slide. These are the core elements of the science of reading. They're often referred to as the 5 pillars. When the program evaluation team appraised the current resource's ability to support implementation of the science of reading, the team indicated that some of our resources had appropriate scope and sequences for instruction, for daily practice, and systematic and explicit instruction. However, our main resource did not have enough explicit instruction, not enough materials to differentiate learning, nor the instruction needed for transfer of skills to occur. After the program evaluation, it was evident that we needed to find a high-quality resource that supported the science of reading, as well as move away from a balanced literacy model toward a comprehensive literacy model. This school year, we've provided learning to all of our elementary staff on shifting from a balanced literacy model to a comprehensive literacy model. The comprehensive literacy model is identified in the state of Missouri's guidance to schools, as well as part of legislation Senate Bill 681. Comprehensive literacy includes the science of reading, And it also includes quality writing, content area literacy, developing higher order thinking skills, as well as oral language development. Other states across the nation have also been shifting to a comprehensive literacy model. 40 states have implemented laws and policies related to evidence-based reading practices to improve literacy outcomes. In our Learning with Educators, we've shared how instruction in ELA will look different. We've called these shifts. For example, we will shift away from guided reading to strategy groups. Strategy groups focus on targeted, flexible instruction, and it's based on students' current grade level needs. Unlike guided reading, which emphasizes level-based text, strategy groups prioritize the Missouri Learning Standards that we want students to master within that particular ELA unit. Strategy groups are fluid, and they can be adjusted as students' skills progress, allowing for more dynamic and effective support. So this slide highlights several key factors that informed our decision-making process. They are bulleted items here, but each factor was a complex review of the resource. As mentioned on the previous slide, it was essential to ensure that any resource recommended would align with our support towards our shift in comprehensive literacy. To demonstrate the thoroughness of this review, I'll highlight just one of those buckets and how we reviewed this resource's ability to support. I'll share the more detail about feasibility for supporting comprehensive literacy and research alignment. We conducted a thorough review of the resource's materials by reading the lessons within each component of the units and reviewing the ancillary resources teachers will use with students during instruction. For each lesson, we assessed how well they supported the following: word recognition, skill application and development, differentiation, language comprehension, and self-regulation. All of these areas encompass the subcategories of comprehensive literacy.
All right, so this brings us to the start of our selection process. I worked with Dr. Sheets in July to review potential resources that aligned with the law regarding core ELA instruction. We reviewed 4 resources: Core Knowledge Language Arts, or CKLA, Benchmark Advanced, Wonders, and Into Reading. In addition to looking over samples of each resource, we looked at reviews on EdReports, the Reading League, and TexasResourceReview.org. Each applies distinct research-based criteria to evaluate instructional materials, ensuring comprehensive and rigorous reviews aligned with evidence-based practices. In our first column, you can see the reviews from EdReports, and all 4 resources meet in the criteria reviewed. The second column represents the results from the Reading League, and 3 of the 4 resources were reviewed. And the Texas Resource Review gave each resource a 100%. After this research, we were comfortable with our decision to bring all 4 resources to the curriculum and adoption team for review. In this initial review, teachers used a rubric developed by the National Center for Education Evaluation and Regional Assistance to evaluate Wonders, CKLA, Benchmark Advanced, and Into Reading. Our team consisted of representatives from each of our 10 elementary schools with various roles and grade levels represented. Vendors were brought in for presentations to the team, and physical samples were sent to each elementary school. Digital access was made available to all teachers in the district as well. After the initial review with the rubric, and after meeting with each vendor, Into Reading was an early favorite among the adoption team, praising its strong phonics, phonological awareness, reading comprehension, writing, and language development instruction, along with high-quality text and engaging lessons. Wonders and Benchmark Advanced followed, with CKLA being the lowest rated based on the rubric results. After our first meeting, the teachers took the samples and information back to their buildings for others to review. We met 2 weeks later during one of the district PD days to continue revising the curriculum documents and exploring the resources. It's one thing to read about lessons and instructional practices, but it is much more effective to live it in the classroom with our students. So we decided at that meeting to ask to trial at least 2 of these resources. To prepare for that, I started the trial process by reaching out to neighboring districts who were piloting or implementing the resources. Teachers continued to review these materials, and our instructional technology content leader and our ADA coordinator began vetting these resources for their accessibility. We met again as a group in October. The technology and ADA leaders presented their findings on each resource. As you can see on the slide, each resource had some issues, but some more than others. CKLA had no read-alouds for text and no captions on games or videos. Benchmark was difficult to navigate for students with motor and/or visual impairments, and Wonders had no video captions. Overall, InterReading had the most accessibility-friendly features for students. After learning more about the accessibility of each resource, we continued our learning about the district's literacy plan. After this learning, coupled with the information about CKLA's accessibility concerns, we decided to no longer explore that resource. The group was then divided into 3 groups to dig deeper into the remaining resources and use a new rubric created by Francis Howell that considered the criteria listed on the slide. We wanted a deeper evaluation of our potential resources before deciding on which to trial. Teachers chose to trial InterReading and Wonders based on the findings listed here. The percentages are from the voting at the end of our day of learning. The academic team made the decision to also trial Benchmark Advanced due to how close the vote was between Wonders and Benchmark. A trial would give our teachers a chance to experience the components of each resource and see how effective they were in meeting the needs of our students at Francis Howell. The literacy team met with building administrators to discuss the scope of the trials. We needed representation from all buildings and all grades. We wanted to avoid selecting first-year teachers or teachers who had visually impaired students, as we would not be able to get Braille materials quickly enough for the trial. We did not want an entire grade level to participate, so we could have a trial group and a business as usual group. So for example, at Costley Elementary, 3 of the 5th grade teachers were the trial group and the other 3 were business as usual, and they would continue to use units of study, benchmark phonics, and patterns of power. We would then be able to use our STAR reading assessment data for both groups as one way to evaluate the effectiveness of the resource. An exception was made at Daniel Boone due to the smaller class sizes and the teacher teams. Wonders would be trialed from the end of October to winter break, and InterReading and Benchmark Advanced ran concurrently from January to March 6th. To participate in the trials, teachers had to attend training with each vendor, give an additional STAR assessment outside of the normal testing window to gather data, allow observations from the literacy team, complete a teacher survey, give student surveys, and send out a parent survey. Teachers would replace units of study, benchmark phonics, and patterns of power with whatever resource they were trialing at the time. We asked them to use the resource with fidelity to get the most comprehensive feedback from them on how each resource would support our shift to comprehensive literacy. The literacy team, consisting of myself, Dr. Sheets, Ms. Sagi, and Dr. Lammers, began classroom visits to observe instruction and provide any support for our trial teachers. We set up visits to neighboring benchmark districts currently in implementation of these resources to gather feedback and see each resource in action. We continued to gather data from teachers, parents, and students within Francis Howell, while also looking at the data and research from districts across the country. Communication was key during this period, so weekly Zoom calls were set up with administrators and coaches, and we also attended in-person collaborative meetings with coaches and principals as well. So we have reviewed our current resources. We've talked about our program evaluation and the shift to comprehensive literacy, and we have reviewed our selection process and the scope of the trials. So now we'd like to pause and answer any questions you might have so far.
Can you go back to slide 9 real quick? I was just thinking.
I can certainly try. Number 9, yes.
I didn't get to read through all of it.
So, as I understand it, the core knowledge is kind of known for bringing in all the cultural literacy, as the book, right? Do these other pieces have that component to it? Maybe I didn't word it right.
Yeah. Like, can you provide a little bit more context or information?
So the core knowledge curriculum the idea behind it is that in order to know the words, you have to know the stories. You have to have the vocabulary. You have to have the mental background.
Yes.
It's the student who knows what baseball is or doesn't.
Like it's
We're on the same page now.
culturally responsive.
Right.
Yeah.
Culturally responsive.
Yes.
Cultural literacy. How much of that aspect do these other resources have as compared to CKLA?
We will talk a little bit more about that. Each unit for each grade level is based around science or social studies or literary themes. And so therefore, they are not only tying in content area, but building that background knowledge and content area vocabulary as well as literary vocabulary.
Fantastic.
You had mentioned visiting other districts. Are those districts nearby, and what other districts are using any of these for? Like, what can you share about that?
Our closest district using Wonders is Winsville. So we did make a visit out there to Boone Trail Elementary. And then Parkway is in first year of, both are, Winsville and Parkway are in first year of implementation of these resources. Parkway is Benchmark Advance. And our closest district with into reading is Orchard Farm, also Cape Girardeau. I've talked with both. We didn't visit Cape Girardeau because it's a little bit a farther drive, but I did talk with their content leader as well. So those are the areas that we visited.
Thank you.
Can you go to 16, please?
I say I really like the study design, trial design. Are you going to get into any statistics or anything?
Yes, we will later, yeah, with our data.
Perfect.
You'll notice like Fairmount is second grade, you'll see that the whole team had a Wonders and Into Reading Benchmark Advance, and that's because Benchmark Advance was brought in after the initial trial was set up. So our Wonders teachers and Into Reading teachers, those were the same teachers. So that group did both. And so we had Benchmark Advance. So Fairmount was an interesting school because the other half of their second grade team then trialed Benchmark Advance.
I see that Harvest Ridge and Harvest Ridge and Independence did not hold the trial of Benchmark.
Again, that was due to just how quickly the turnaround was. Like it was, we asked to trial Benchmark in the beginning of December, and we had to ask for teacher teams to volunteer, and they couldn't get anybody
Makes sense.
at that time, yeah.
Our next section is about test results and kind of our recommendation, if you guys are ready to hear a little about what we found.
So sorry. I keep trying to mute myself, but then I'm really trying to. All right, so at the conclusion of the trials, the team evaluated all the results and considered each resource in relation to the selection criteria. From here, we will share with you the results of the trial and what led us to our ultimate recommendation of Into Reading as the K-5 ELA resource. Teacher feedback was overwhelmingly positive with Into Reading. They appreciated the clear lesson layouts and engaging nature of materials for students. Into Reading was seen as providing ample support for differentiated instruction with built-in scaffolds, various options for small group work, and resources catering to different learning levels, including suggestions for supporting struggling learners and English language learners. Another major positive was how teachers saw their students were actively engaged and motivated in both reading and writing throughout Into Reading. Teachers' biggest concern was with fitting every component of Into Reading into the current structures of our ELA blocks. This will be addressed as we work with building administrators on adjusting the allocation of minutes during ELA. The other concerns listed on the slide can be attributed to the length of the trial and the teachers not being able to get deeper into the resource just due to the time constraints. One of our trial teachers was so impressed with the growth she saw in her second grade writers. She sent us samples from a student who started off the year in a very rough spot with writing. There were frequent tears, minimal details, constant need for sentence starters, and support. But by the end of the Into Reading trial, the same student wrote a multi-page imaginative story with little support from her. He says that writing is now his favorite part of the day, and that's just another testament to how Into Reading will help foster writing stamina and an appreciation for writing, even in our struggling writers. Parents had positive things to say about their child's experiences with Into Reading. Some of the comments we received were, "I really like how systematic Into Reading is. I am hopeful this will be the district's choice. We have struggled all year to have my child be engaged with literacy, and this is the first time he is coming home sharing and using vocabulary and skills he has learned. I've seen so much growth in my daughter's reading abilities and even in her confidence in her writings. For example, she has gone from reading small books like Pete the Cat to now reading a chapter book called The Wild Robot on her own. I believe the program and her teacher are helping her reach her goals and become more successful." Students also felt positively towards the work they did with Into Reading. The routines built into the resource allowed for more actual learning time. We need to maximize every instructional minute we have with students, and when there are clear routines in place for students, less time is wasted in moving from one activity to the next. Students also commented they felt that they were better readers and writers after the trial. If you recall our decision buckets from earlier in the presentation, we are able to show how Into Reading fills each bucket. Almost 74% of teachers who participated in the trials recommended Into Reading. Based on feedback from teachers, Into Reading is favored for its systematic and explicit instruction in foundational skills, its engaging content that leads to high student engagement, and its structured yet flexible approach to literacy instruction. Teachers found it easy to use and comprehensive, requiring no supplementation, which is a significant financial and practical advantage. Ultimately, the teams trialing all three resources agreed that Into Reading is the best choice due to its overall effectiveness and positive impact on students and teachers. Our student data showed that students who participated in Into Reading had more positive growth on the STAR assessment than students who did not participate in a trial. We gathered research from both local districts and districts around the country who have adopted and implemented Into Reading. The neighboring districts who adopted Into Reading in 2019 saw the COVID dip in scores like everyone else saw, but have seen steady increases in MAP performance each year since. States like Mississippi and Massachusetts who have adopted Into Reading have made significant and positive growth on the NAEP, and all of the research collected indicates that Into Reading aligns with the science of reading. So far, we've shared that information about 4 of those 6 decision buckets that we've considered. Dr. Sheets will share how our selected resource aligns to the comprehensive literacy model, and I will share what we will get with our purchase, and Dr. Lammers will discuss the cost associated with the adoption of the resource.
So in April, we will bring to the board meeting Into Reading as our ELA recommendation because, as Julie's mentioned, that it has filled our decision buckets. We do have Angie and Joanne in the audience that can answer any questions about the resource that we may not be able to answer for you today. But as I mentioned, comprehensive literacy encompasses not only the science of reading, but it also includes writing, content area literacy, the development of higher order thinking skills, and oral language. So as I go through this, here we have the 5 pillars, which represent the science of reading. And this research is based on a body of knowledge that explains how the brain learns to read. It encompasses decades of interdisciplinary studies. The science of reading highlights the essential components of effective reading instruction. And in addition to these pillars, oral language, background knowledge, writing, content area literacy are also critical for literacy development. In the following slides, I'm going to highlight a few examples from the resource that demonstrate how lessons in Into Reading support the shift to comprehensive literacy. And these examples, they're really brief glimpses into each element. From beginning to end, Into Reading consistently supports comprehensive literacy and the needed resources that support our teachers with effective literacy instruction. Okay, so here let's take a look at word recognition. In this lesson example, on the left we have a primary grade phonics lesson. I want you to notice how it guides the teacher through the instruction of vowel, consonant, E syllable types. It provides language for the teacher to use in his or her explicit instruction. It provides examples. And it provides the anchor for the teacher to use. Do you see the man in the cape up at the top? Okay, cape, that's a vowel consonant E word, right? So the students have this anchor as well to refer to as they are reading and writing. Moving over to the right-hand side of the slide, we have an intermediate grade level example. This lesson focuses on morphology. Morphology is the study of base words, roots, prefixes, and suffixes. In this example, it's a lesson extension where students continue learning either in small group or on their own. And notice how that they're reminded of the skill of morphology. Then they can explore in more detail morphemes that they've already been taught during their whole group instruction with their teacher. Interreading lessons connect new information with prior knowledge. This is essential for building comprehension and critical thinking skills. Notice in the primary grade example on the left, learning begins with oral language development, where collaborative conversations encourage students to listen and respond thoughtfully. As the students progress the grades, notice how the language comprehension evolves. By grade 5, students develop a deeper understanding of various genres and characteristics that define those genres. Here, students are writing responses to texts. Writing plays a crucial role in the development of language comprehension, helping students to refine their thinking by clarifying their explanations and sharpening their arguments. These skills foster critical thinking by encouraging students to analyze, evaluate, and synthesize, leading to more thoughtful and independent readers and thinkers. Interreading units last typically 3 to 4 weeks depending on the grade level, and the entire unit is devoted to a topic, either a social studies topic, a science topic, or a literary topic. Before we even get started in the unit, teachers are setting goals with students, they're activating students' background knowledge, and sharing information with families. In this example, the theme is animal behaviors. Each unit starts with an essential question that corresponds to this theme. This unit's essential question is, what behaviors help animals survive? Each unit includes texts focused on the unit's theme. These texts are not only informational texts, but short videos, narrative texts, and even magazines. You also have a library of books to teach strategy groups. In this particular 3rd grade unit, the students will also apply the skills they learn in a research project. Their task, create a wildlife blog. Interreading, as mentioned, revolves around science, social studies, or literary themes. In this 4th grade unit, it's called Food for Thought. The focus is science and health. In the beginning of the unit, students will gain background knowledge on nutrition by watching informative videos. Additionally, there are several informational texts on nutrition to deepen students' understanding of the topic. Text within this late winter unit is complex and meets the Lexile standards for this grade level. Additionally, this unit ties to the 4th grade health standards. These standards indicate students should be able to determine the cause and effect of healthy lifestyle choices as they relate to the 3 layers of nutrition, hydration, and exercise. The essential question in this ELA unit is, what can we do to make more healthful food choices? In this unit, students are taught content area literacy by looking at text features within informational text. Content area literacy is an important aspect of the comprehensive literacy model.
All right, so we can pause here again for any questions that we might have on the previous slides.
Did you take a look at like student performance between the different resources and like between different cohorts?
Yes.
Any
Dive into those a little bit. We did, so this year is our first year with the STAR assessment. And, we've made that shift because of the legislation. And our STAR is given 3 times a year in 1st through 8th grade and twice in kindergarten. So we give that first test in August, September to everybody, and that's like our baseline data. And then between the first window and second window, there were 60 instructional days. And within those days, we had 16 dedicated to wonders. Those were kids trialing wonders. And when that second assessment window was given, we saw a significant improvement in the students who participated in the trial of wonders. When we have, then we go on winter break, and as we know, winter break got a little bit longer this year with our wonderful Missouri weather. So we always experience a learning loss. There's always a dip, in these winter months. And when we had benchmark and inter-reading trialing, we administered another STAR test at the end of February, beginning of March. So that was represented about 26 total instructional days. So that's like 34 days less than the original window. The inter-reading students, they saw an improvement, grew in addition. Our benchmark advanced students actually had a regression. They saw negative growth within theirs. So, we look at STAR, but we also know that there's a lot of things that come into factor with these data points. And we know that from January to about spring break, there's so many starts and stops in our school year with snow days and things like that. But we still saw, positive growth in our students who participated. And overall, it shows that students who had those 42 instructional days of a resource based in the science of reading saw much more growth than students who did not.
Thank you. You had mentioned that 73.3% of teachers preferred inter-reading. What were the numbers of the people who preferred the other resources?
So it really came down to, it was really just a vote between benchmark advance and inter-reading. Our teachers sort of discounted wonders after the trials. Once they got into inter-reading and benchmark advance, we knew that was not going to be the one for us. And so when I talked about Fairmount earlier being kind of a unique school, the benchmark advance teachers at Fairmount all voted for inter-reading, even though they experienced benchmark advance. So that 24%, they voted for benchmark advance. So we even had some of our teachers who did not do inter-reading, but saw what their teammates were doing and saw what other grade levels in the building were doing. They liked that resource better, saw it being more effective and more engaging.
Did you say the entire state of Massachusetts uses inter-reading?
They've adopted it as one of their recommended resources.
Because don't they still rank highest in the United States at achievement?
Yeah, I think Massachusetts had benchmark, inter-reading. Those are on their list as well, yeah.
Okay.
You mentioned in the first round that you looked at ed reports and some other sites, and then you went into the IES, which I think is the Waterworks Clearinghouse, is that right?
That particular rubric that we used was, it was on the Department of, sorry. The IES rubric, is that what you're referring to, that we used?
Yes.
That is on the Department of Education website, but it was created by Florida State University.
Okay. My underlying question there is there any studies, research into this particular program over a number of years?
Yes, there was. We looked at research. It was a Capstone United. Howell research group. They have conducted from 2019 on with inter-reading, seeing significant growth in 3rd grade and 5th grade respectively over the course of the use of the program. And I'm sure our reps could maybe speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, we have multiple efficacy studies that have been done.
Excuse me, can somebody have a microphone for, so that people, so that the people who are watching us online can hear?
Here you go, you can just sit right there.
Yeah, thank you. We have multiple efficacy studies run internally by us, but then by external companies as well, with a variety of district sizes, district population groups. All of them show positive impact. Obviously, some much stronger, much more than other than the studies show. But we have ESSER rating of can't even think of the word. It's above moderate. What's the level above moderate?
I think it's meets or exceeds.
It's either meets or exceeds. It's not exceeds, so where it meets, it's you have to have a 3 to 5 year study to get. And with the program being, as new as it is, we don't have that yet. We definitely have efficacies, and we can provide all of those to you guys to read through. We've got summary sheets on them as well. I could even sit back here and pull some of them up and give you some more information.
Yeah, that'd be helpful to look at over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
You had mentioned that in this version to reading that there is goal setting between the teachers and the kids. Is that different? Is that unique with interreading, or is that something that's part of the other resources or the current resource that we're doing?
When I was reviewing the resources for those components, it was more explicit and more pronounced in our interreading resource.
Just one more comment on any sort of background research, but if you can target the ones that are whose demographics look most like Francis Howell, that would be most helpful.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, we will move on with what we will be getting with our purchase of interreading. And I will start with our student materials. Each student will get a copy of my book that includes all of the shared readings. Students can annotate and answer questions directly in these books. They can take them home at the end of the year to build their reading libraries at home. Each module or unit has a focal text. That's the main piece of reading that students engage with. Teachers use these to plan lessons, ask questions, and guide students through comprehension strategies. They're paired with the other related texts, both fiction and nonfiction, to provide that broader exploration of the topic. Big books are in grades K through 1, and they are what they sound like. They're just enlarged versions of children's books to promote shared reading. In grades K through 3, students have access to decodable text libraries. These are carefully crafted to include words that can be sounded out using the phonics rules and the letter-sound relationships that students are learning. This builds decoding skills and, more importantly, confidence in reading. Interreading provides ample handheld materials for students, but they also have some online resources as well. Waggle aims to enhance student proficiency and growth in ELA skills through adaptive practice and personalized learning experiences. Waggle analyzes student data to provide the most appropriate learning experiences at the right time with personalized practice and instruction. While it does not replace the teacher, it provides ongoing formative assessments, allowing teachers to monitor student progress and make informed instructional decisions. It's designed to align with interreading scope and sequence, so it reinforces core instruction. It has various assignment types, including skill boosts, learning goals, and games, which can help engage students and foster a love of learning. HMH also offers something called the Family Room, which is a supplemental tool that teachers and families can use to support literacy at home. Teachers can print materials to support extended learning beyond the classroom with personalized tips and information about interreading and how parents can get involved in their students' learning. And these can be printed in multiple languages. Parents and caregivers can also access these resources online at home. A variety of print and digital teaching materials are included with interreading, including teacher manuals for each unit. In grades K through 2, teachers can use articulation videos and instructional cards to deliver the direct and explicit instruction needed in phonics, phonemic awareness, and vocabulary. Teachers in grades 3 through 5 have vocabulary cards to use with students to reinforce the acquisition of new vocabulary. Student-friendly anchor charts are available. Teachers can display these or print copies of the charts for students to put in their notebooks for easy reference. Book sticks are nice big sticky notes that teachers can attach to the back of big books and read aloud books to help guide instruction and refer to while reading with children. Foundational Skills in Word Study Studio is a bank of sequenced lessons and activities designed to provide intensive instruction and practice in foundational literacy skills like phonics, spelling, and word study. Knowledge maps explicitly teach students how good readers make connections automatically when they read and learn about a new topic. And Classcraft is a teacher-centered tool that helps teachers run their classrooms and make lessons more fun and engaging. It has ready-to-use activities for reading, writing, vocabulary, and grammar. Teachers can use it to keep students focused and involved by adding game-like features like avatars and points to motivate them. It also helps teachers see how students are doing in real time so that they can adjust their lessons as needed, and it makes it easier to manage that class and give different students the help that they need. One of the biggest concerns our teachers have with any new resource adoption is how much support they will get, not only from the district, but from the company as well. HMH includes a multitude of resources to support teachers, administrators, and coaches through their first year of implementation and beyond. As part of our package, all teachers get access to ED, the HMH learning platform. ED integrates with Clever for easy, single sign-on use for teachers and students. Teachers will get an implementation guide with day-by-day instructions and explanations of materials to ensure a smooth start to the school year. Into Reading addresses each of our priority standards multiple times throughout multiple modules, so teachers can pinpoint when and where those standards will be taught and assessed. HMH will guide teachers through our first year of implementation with in-person trainings at all of our buildings. Supporting this shift to comprehensive literacy and professional learning around the resource is the focus of our elementary professional learning next year for 25-26 school year. The Teacher's Corner is the most impressive professional learning platform that I've ever seen. There are videos, self-paced learning modules, and community forums where teachers can collaborate with educators across the country who have implemented Into Reading. And finally, Into Reading supports learning in the content areas of social studies and science. The Fine Arts and Social Studies content leader, Dr. Matt Van Horn, and the Science content leader, Dr. Sarah Norath, reviewed the content in Into Reading and compared that with the topics and Missouri Learning Standards for elementary social studies and science, respectively. They found that Into Reading would support priority standards in both content areas, and this is beneficial as they move forward with writing new elementary curriculums for science and social studies this summer.
So before I share information about the cost to the district, I want to take a moment to thank Julie Roguski, Melinda Sheets, Jen Steggy sitting back there, Dr. Buckman and the academic team, all the elementary principals, instructional coaches, all the members of the resource selection team, and the classroom teachers who participated in the trials. We've said many times this year that this is the most important academic thing we are doing as a district this year, and that fact was not lost on this group of people. As you've seen, the Into Reading resource is rigorous, thorough, and aligns with all 5 of the decision buckets that we've discussed so far. In the next few slides, I'll share information about the costs associated with adopting Into Reading as our K-5 ELA resource, and I'll begin by discussing a resource that we'll no longer need. As we completed the trials, we kept a close eye on the impact our selection might have on supplemental resource use. Into Reading also includes a robust phonics resource that accomplishes the same objectives as Benchmark Phonics, which is the currently adopted phonics resource in all district elementary schools. For this reason, with this resource approval, we will cease using Benchmark Phonics, which will result in a cost savings of at least $138,000 each year, or $828,000 over the 6-year term of this purchase. Our intention during the first year of implementation is not to use any major district purchased supplemental ELA resources at the K-5 level. This will allow us to conduct a true evaluation of the utility and effectiveness of the resource. We're aware that no resource is perfect, so if our implementation highlights a need for supplementation, then we'll move to update practices or change the way we're implementing, or potentially look at supplements that could meet student needs. We don't anticipate that being needed. Negotiations with HMH led to significant discounts of more than $800,000, which are noted in the 4th column of this slide. HMH submitted a final bid package that is highly competitive and close in scope with the other 2 vendors. For all the reasons that we've already discussed, we believe that Into Reading is the best choice for our students. From a value standpoint, one important factor we considered is that the Into Reading purchase includes the Waggle platform, which Wonders and Benchmark Phonics could not match. The selection team and academic leaders have complete confidence that Into Reading is the best choice academically, while also providing the highest value to the district taxpayer. The total cost of the HMH proposal for Into Reading is $2,293,674.57.
HMH has agreed to spread the cost of this purchase over 3 fiscal years, with $293,674.57 coming from the current fiscal year, $1 million coming from fiscal year '26, and the last $1 million being paid in fiscal year '27. Paying for the resource in this manner provides another significant benefit to the district. Internally, there will be additional costs that are not reflected in the HMH cost proposal. In order to properly train teachers for the adoption of interreading, the district will need to pay summer and after-school stipends and substitute teacher salaries. We anticipate that these stipends and sub-costs will be approximately $45,000 to train and develop close to 600 teachers across 10 buildings. Approximately half of this cost will come from our 1% fund allocation. This cost would be consistent regardless of the resource chosen for adoption. And as a final step before bringing interreading to the Board of Education, we presented the resource to Academic Advisory on Tuesday, March 18th. After a thorough review of the resource and the digital tools, and after viewing a presentation similar to this, Academic Advisory voted unanimously on the recommendation of interreading as the district's resource for K-5 ELA beginning in the 25-26 school year. The next step in our adoption process was to hold this work session with our Board of Education.
So Board, that really is the information that we have to share with you tonight. We hope you were able to see kind of the journey that we took from the program eval, where we highlighted the need to make a change, and the process that we used this school year to explore the different options, talk with other districts, look at the research, look at the data, gather input from our teachers, from our students, from our families, and really feel confident with the resource that we're bringing you, that it'll have a positive impact on our students, on our teachers, on our community in general. So as I mentioned, the vendors are in the room. We have samples around there. We're happy to answer any additional questions you have. If you want to hop up and take a look at the resources, we're happy to allow time for that. We'll stick around and answer questions. We will bring the recommendation, it'll just be a purchase recommendation, to the regular April board meeting. So between now and then, if you think of questions that you have, we're happy to answer those ahead of time, or if there's additional information that you need, we're happy to gather that for you ahead of time. And then at the risk of being redundant, just again, this team has a very full-time job on a regular basis, and as you can see, there was a significant amount of time and energy put into this process on top of the normal duties that they do. So just appreciate everyone from this table to the buildings that participated in the process.
You had mentioned that interreading offers this family room that allows it to be applied better at home. Can you explain what a regular parent might see in the family room option and how that might help out overall?
Tagging it red.
Yeah, so in the digital family room, it is a resource that parents have access to through the student login information, and it has information on how to, just kind of some tips and strategies for parents and families on navigation with our platform for their student, as well as their assessment information, just tips and strategies on bringing literacy to, having conversations at the kitchen table around what they were doing at school. It just has a lot of professional learning for teachers and Teachers Corner, and then for families within the family room, just to bring literacy, reading, writing, bring that back into the home life as well.
So it allows the parents to use the same kind of language regarding reading at home that's also being done at the school.
Exactly. It makes things just make more sense to parents who maybe are not, as involved in education as we all are in this room. It just kind of gives them more information about why students are learning the way that they're learning, which may look differently than the way that they learned reading and writing in their own school years. It really just kind of brings that information into the hands of parents and families.
Thank you. And
Absolutely.
My last question was that somewhere around slide 37, it said that something about whether it's the anchor chats or the online waggle, that there is some mechanism there that allows the teachers to know how the students are doing in real time, is the language you guys used. Can you explain what that looks like? How does a teacher use what's going on to be able to know, are they slipping, are they excelling? How does this help teachers know the students' progress in real time?
So I would say that there's two things. So the first is the Classcraft. That's the teacher tool. So if I were a teacher using Classcraft, I can display something on the smart board for all students to see. And if they happen to have a device in front of them, then maybe on that device, I'm displaying a question that I want them to answer. And then another tab on my computer, I'm seeing the answer. So as students answer, I can look and see, all right, these 5, they get it. These 5 don't. So tomorrow when I pull my small groups, I'm going to go ahead and pull them. With Waggle, the way I've seen it used throughout the trial, as teachers have used it, as they're pulling their small group, they have students doing Waggle maybe 10 to 15 minutes 2 or 3 times a week, but Waggle provides detailed reports and will assign skill practices as needed as the students respond, so it's adapted to them. So teachers then have access to look and see, okay, this kid's been making this progress on this one skill or standard, and they're engaged. So it's during that small group time when sometimes we walk into classrooms in small group, the teachers has the small group and the kids are supposed to be doing things, but they're not doing the things. Waggle helps to keep them engaged in that, and that's still, they're getting the reteaching, they're getting extension, and through the Ed platform, teachers can pull reports on students on a daily basis and see what kind of progress they've made and where they're sort of at each skill.
And you believe this resource offers that better than the other resources?
100%. Mm-hmm.
In an ideal world, we're trying to take things off our teachers' plates, and I think we all recognize that for an elementary teacher, this adoption, it's a learning curve, it's a lot more. You touched on Waggle and some of the data pieces, but when we think about differentiation, what we're asking teachers to do in the classroom, you mentioned English learners, but maybe students with special needs. What is it offering by way of providing that information and changes in instruction for them?
I can speak to this, but I know our vendors can also come up as well. There are very specific targeted English language learner lesson. They're tabletop mini lessons. For every single lesson within a teacher's guide, it has, for your struggling readers, these are the steps and scaffolds you can take. For our struggling writers, here's the steps and scaffolds you can make. You can elaborate more.
Yeah, and for every lesson, there are English language supports right inside of the teacher's guide. So there is substantial, moderate, and light. Substantial, moderate, and light scaffolding for each lesson. So if I'm in foundational skills, if I'm in reading, if I'm in vocabulary, if I'm in writing, I have English learner support. As well as just struggling learner support and ways to challenge those who are ready for more. Additionally, there are English language development lessons that are provided for every single daily lesson that is centered around language development. So as a teacher, if I want to pull a small group support for a struggling reader, for an English language learner, for a student who wants to focus on skills and strategies, or for students that are ready for that extra challenge, Into Reading provides those resources and a list of those resources at the weekly level so that teachers know exactly the right support for the right student at the right time.
You want to talk about the small group books and how they blend the small group into the theme and
Yes, we
support the learning and theme.
We also have HMH readers that are available for teachers to be able to use to continue to build that background. I know you had talked about the importance of building background knowledge around these topics that students are learning in order for them to understand vocabulary and to really be able to comprehend the text. We provide additional HMH readers that can help students to continue to build that background knowledge and to do so either with teacher support or to read to a partner, to read independently, that again center around that module topic in science or social studies or literary themes, that they can now continue to build that knowledge on their own as well as within the classroom community.
And are those readers part of the adoption? They're included with
Correct,
resources?
yeah, absolutely.
I understand this is subjective, but Dr. Sheets and Mr. Gus, you've spent a lot of time with this. What excites you most? Like, what if you were going to go talk to parents tonight, teachers, what would you say when we think about closing the achievement gap, the better core instruction, core literacy materials, the fewer kids, hopefully, that need reading success plans, less intervention. So what excites you most? I didn't hear that tonight.
Well, I have spent my career as an 8th grade ELA teacher, and I came to this district in 2015. And I've seen a decline in middle school reading and writing abilities. And what I'm seeing now in classrooms through these trials gets me so excited, and I'm bragging to my 6th, 7th, 8th grade friends, like, you guys just wait. We're back to providing those foundational skills. Seeing students excited, the one teacher who mentioned the student who's excited about writing, we visited classrooms constantly, and one teacher said, okay guys, it's time for writing. Another little boy went, yes, and I was like, you do not see, I'm sorry, you don't see little boys, especially, 2nd grade, be like, yes, it's time for writing. They are engaged, they're excited, they're enjoying the content that they are getting, and they are becoming more confident. I sat through another phonics lesson, and students were just automatically going through listing all of the different sounds that a letter can make, and I pulled the teacher aside and I was like, you told them I was coming, right? And she goes, nope, it's becoming automatic because we are very systematic. This is a very systematic system. So that's what really excites me, to see what these kids are going to be doing when they get to middle school and high school, and how that's going to improve, and just how excited they are for just reading and writing in general again.
One of the things that I kind of stole my thunder here. I was going to ask about that I read the letter that he wrote about the astronauts and Mars and things like that, and it struck me. It's I thought back, like, what were the things that I love to see about my kids as they're coming up and reading, and it was one of those things. It's the confidence behind it, and how they come home and at first they were like, and now she comes home and she's like, that's the first thing she does is she picks up a book, and then they have time in class where they can be doing anything and she's reading. And I'm like, that totally was not me. I don't know where you get that, probably from your mother, but I guess my question surrounding that is, can you give us a little bit more insight as to how the teachers saw the confidence building in those types of kids as they were coming out with this and learning how to adapt this new curriculum? What did they see? How was that going? It seems like it really hit home with these kids.
I think what teachers commented on more and more and more using all of their resources was, man, we have really lacked in teaching vocabulary. And watching students get excited about learning new vocabulary words. That way they are feeling more confident as they approach a text. They're not intimidated by it. That was across the board. That was from kindergarten through 5th grade. Teachers saw just more students being willing to try reading without that fight in them, because that's what my kids do. He's the fighter right now. He doesn't want to read when he gets home. He hates it. And I, as an educator, but not an elementary, I'm using the words and the language that I'm getting from the lessons that I'm seeing with him at home to help him in his tier 3 reading practices. I think I got off track because I was talking about my own kid. I'm sorry. Teachers are loving. They have more time to actually teach. It is less time trying to piece together all 3 of these separate resources, and more time is focused on actually teaching and getting in and really digging deeper with their students.
I have a few odds and ends that I would like to throw in there. Mine's probably a little bit more nerdy than Julie's, but just thinking about all that we have learned around teaching reading and how the brain learns to read, being able to actually see that in daily lesson plans. So why are students able to apply this, or why are teachers increase in efficacy? It's because of the systematic, cumulative, explicit lessons that are written in this particular resource. And I think that shift in, the teachers commented that how am I going to fit all of this in? Well, it looks different than what we've always done. And so the students are getting a lot more direct instruction than what we've had before. And so I think that also plays into the successes that we have seen and our students' confidence, as well as our teacher efficacy raising.
Any questions, board?
I have a few questions. Is this for 6 years? This
Yes.
adoption? Okay. You mentioned Orchard Farm is the only other one around here that how long have they been using? Do you remember?
2019 they adopted. They were never a units of study school. They were Journeys, and then Journeys was discontinued, and so they picked into reading. And Cape Girardeau was in the same, they were never a units of study school. And I know Lee Summit is also adopted, like they're starting to adopt, but.
So they had 6 years. Do we know if they're readopting?
Orchard Farm?
Orchard. Not that we were the same.
They are, I think they have one more year until they're up for their curriculum rewrite. So I know they are still enjoying the resource. They even have version 1, so we would be adopting a version 3, and they are still enjoying into reading and seeing success.
I thought I picked up that you said maybe that ELA minutes will go up to fit everything.
They won't go up, it'll just be how we allocate our time. So the minutes will stay the same, but how we spread out reading, writing, grammar, word study will look differently, but the actual minutes will not change, no.
For an example, right now in primary grades, they spend 15 to 20 minutes on phonics. They have structured literacy lessons in version 3, which are about 30 to 45 minutes. So it'll still be within that 150 minutes, but we'll be shifting where they allocate that time.
When we change this, there will be some kids, maybe third, fourth, fifth graders, who won't be on track. I don't know a better way to say it. They didn't start in kindergarten like the kindergartners and first graders. How does that work with kids who are in the middle?
So as part of the professional learning and our training, few of the resources that we show are supports to help differentiate and fill in some of those skill gaps that are potentially missing from previous grade levels, including foundational skills as well as looking at reading comprehension and writing support. There are embedded resources in those differentiation tools to be able to support, this is what we're working on right now in, say, 4th grade decoding. Here's what we're working on, and here are some mini lessons that if I have some students that need some extra skill support from 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 1st grade, I'm able to pull those as an educator to be able to use with my students in my 4th grade class.
So does the teacher PD look different for 4th grade teachers versus 1st grade, or are they all in one cohort?
So it can, that can be done as a whole group for sure, K through 5 or split into grade levels. But however, the professional learning itself will cover all of the components of Into Reading. So it will be a session that really gets teachers, when they're opening up these boxes of resources and seeing how they all fit together, that will include core instruction day to day, as well as differentiation and intervention supports inside of Into Reading.
I'm going to ask Dr. Altman to pop up, and she can talk a little bit about what we have planned for teachers in terms of professional learning at the beginning of the year and then throughout the school year.
Yes, so we're actually going to start, if you remember from the beginning of the presentation, around the shifts in comprehensive literacy. So I think one thing to keep in mind is we are adopting a new resource, and if you think of that slide with all those shifts, there's also shifts in how we're teaching literacy. So we're really committed to not just next year, but the following year to provide professional learning for our teachers around the resource as well as those shifts. So it really will be a 2-year learning process. We will do, like they were talking about, some of the learning will be mixed where they are in grade level specific. So like your kindergarten teachers will be cohorted together working with our Into Reading PD experts. And then that will also be mixed with some training within their building, where we will be really building capacity in some of our teachers within our buildings to be building trainers as well. And so those trainers will receive professional learning also from our Into Reading specialists to be able to provide that. So it'll be kind of a mix where we'll have some learning that's very specific to their grade level in a cohort, but then also with their building, as well as they can look at some vertical alignment too and having those conversations. The other thing that we're adding that we're excited about is we'll have teachers apply to be a lab classroom trainer as well. And so that's just, again, building more capacity in our buildings of who's a go-to in the building I can go to when I'm struggling with, how to implement this or what does that look like. And so those teachers will receive PD from our interreading specialists as well, and they'll open up their classrooms for our teachers to come in and get like a peek of, I'm just really, we mentioned the phonics, the word study, I need to look at that, how are you getting it down to that 30 minutes, and they'll open their classrooms for teachers to come in and experience that and really learn from each other. So we're working to just really provide a comprehensive PD plan that's a mix that's going to meet all staff needs as we go forward.
So, since you're up, I'll ask one more PD question. Right now, we've done a fair amount of letters training for teachers. I guess I'm just curious, how is the letters different from this? I'm sure maybe that's more advanced, or can you speak to that a little bit?
That's a great question. So I will tell you our plan to continue letters. We were lucky with our ESSER funds that we were really able to get 60 teachers this last summer. Completing the letters training is a huge commitment. It is a very intensive PD that requires a lot of outside time on your own, like 50, 40, so it's significant. And so these teachers were committed to coming and doing that work outside of the time. And it's a significant cost. So we were excited that through the ESSER funds, we were able to do that. Dr. Sheets has worked with our budget this year to propose of how we can continue to provide letters training in unique ways, whether that's some after-school cohorts, things that we can do around, the substitute situation. And so we're committed to continue to provide letters, but I'll let her explain kind of what the difference between the two is.
So letters is really the professional learning, the theory behind the science of reading. How do students develop language? How do they develop skills in order to learn to read and spell words accurately? So it goes through, the four-part processor in the brain, the dendrites, and how those connect through instruction. And it gives specific activities that I think multimodal was on one of the slides that when we looked at our resources, we wanted multimodal learning because that does build the neural pathways in the brain. So they learn about all of those. They see example activities, and it's general. So like, for example, we had kindergarten through 5th grade teachers in our letters cohorts last summer. And so they learn general information about teaching reading and spelling. With interreading, they're going to see a lot of what they learned in letters present in the resource, except it's grade specific. And so the resource is going to go into more detail of, like I showed you the example of the A consonant E syllable type. It's going to go into more specifics and more detail about how to teach that, to decode, as well as to read. Does that help?
Yeah, so it all jives.
It does, yeah.
Other questions, board?
I was just wondering if any of the other resources tied in social studies and science. They do?
They did, yeah.
Okay.
I don't have enough information. The information is coming. I'm sure the data you talked about, you're going to provide data for comparable school districts, how it'll relate to our district. We could get some information on relative cost of the other curriculum that you looked at to compare it to this, as well as what was the other? The data, as well as you said substantial improvement in those classes that use the interreading. I'm sure we'll get that data as well. So all that information will be available for us to consider before the next meeting, right? So, yeah.
Just one more on the cost. So we see here, 2.29 million. The sheet prior had an estimated savings of 828 from benchmark. So I should subtract that 828 from 2.2, right?
So I'm sure the next presentation will also include how that will be incorporated into the overall budget.
Yes, Dr. Lammers, as he's worked with Ms. Embry, she's been working with each department to gather information for next year. The adoption of this resource has been included along the entire way.
You mentioned the next presentation, so I just want to be clear. This is the presentation. At the next meeting, it's just going to be in that list of purchases. That's it.
Right. I guess the present, wrong.
For that
No, that's okay. I just-
That information, all the information we talked about will be provided to us so we can consider it
Yes.
before the next
You
meeting.
know with that
Yes.
All right.
I'll be the first to say thank you. It looks like you guys have done a lot of work, and I'm excited about this one.
I want to also say thank you, and is there any possibility that data is visible to the public? Like, how is that?
It has to be.
Will that be in terms of?
I think what we could do is whatever they provide, we could post under tonight's meeting on board docs, under public content along with this presentation.
That way, the community can see, here's what happened in the classrooms, the issues that Brown was just mentioning. That'd be great.
This week's been talking about this, talked about having the resources available in this building if people want to come in before the next board meeting, that somewhere in the lobby or the HR office we could have available if people wanted to come in and peruse them.
That's good.
So I would just say to tie this in with the data and everything, this is going to be a significant investment. So I think the community would have a right to know, like Mr. Blair's talking about. The community should have an expectation of what we should be able to achieve by adopting this. Significant cost, significant gains. I think that's only fair.
I do have a couple follow-up questions. Curious, I appreciate that we're an 8th grade ELA teacher. Was there any of our middle school ELA interventionist support teachers that were involved in reviewing this resource? Did they have any input?
So I actually reached out to just, kind of unofficially to some of my friends in 6th grade. I was at Howell Middle, so reached out to Ms. Renee. And just kind of showed her what we were looking at, and she was really excited because it really more aligns with what we've had to do at the middle school level in trying to sort of close some of these gaps and more align with how we teach. So for example, students in middle school are always, responding to literature and annotating text, and it's not so much, big, long, imaginative pieces of writing that we're currently doing in units of study, but it's more evidence-based, like, can you pull this from the text? Can you evaluate a piece of reading? And that's what this resource does, and it's having students do. And I think that was one of the holdups some of the teachers first saw, like, they're not writing enough. Well, yes, they are. It's more quality over the quantity. And so she was excited to see that this would be something that was kind of more aligned with how we instruct in middle school.
I really appreciate that because I know elementary school, middle school, and there's a gap in between. So.
Yeah, and when you talked about how are we going to close those gaps, well, that's what middle school we do. We'll have 3 or 4 elementary schools feeding into one in middle school, and that 6th grade year is just built. We are just trying to get everybody, where they need to be. And what's exciting is if we get a resource like this, and that work won't have to be as strenuous in middle schools to focus more on instruction in the middle school level.
I did notice there's no new tiered interventions or anything built into this, so we would be utilizing current tiered interventions for any struggling readers. Mm-hmm. Is there any concern over that? As far as does that match up properly, do we think?
So we are doing a little bit of revision with our Tier 3 interventions. We currently are using Take Flight and Build, which we've presented on that to the board before, and our reading teachers have gone through that 2-year training. We're finishing that up this school year. And then we are adding additional structured literacy interventions to our Tier 3. With that being said, the students that we're servicing will look different. It's going to be our students who are the 0 to 15 percentile rank in our Tier 3. And then we will have a little bit more flexibility in our Tier 2 interventions to be either doing currently what we're doing with our programming, such as 95% group, or working more specifically on grade level standards.
Thank you. I know there's some requests for similar district data. I'd be curious to see if, I know we said there's a kind of separate specialty area for English language learners. I'd love to see any data around that, as well as any data for like diagnosed like struggling readers. Like you have struggling readers that just haven't had enough reading, and you have struggling readers that have a reason they're struggling, right? So
Yeah.
those that know, like a has dyslexia, there's a reason for it. How does this impact them, and is it bringing them up as well? If there's any data around that, I'd be curious. But no, I really appreciate all the hard work and that what it takes. Any other questions, Board? All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Or like a motion to adjourn open session. So moved.
Second.
Ponder. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Thank you everybody for joining.
It's good to get all the data, right?